Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another NFL video. I made the most improved teams video, and then I thought to myself, there's a couple more teams I could do. So we got the part two to the NFL most improved teams. All of these teams compared to last video, all those teams, I believe, what was it? The Cardinals, the Titans, and the fucking who the fuck else was it? It was somebody else. I don't feel like either any of those teams could really be like playoff teams. You know what I mean? I feel like all three of these teams could really like I actually expect them to be contenders. Like I could see these teams in this video winning a Super Bowl. So let's get right into it, man. Thank you for watching. Short intro as always. Not always, but luckily today. All right, starting it off with a team I know very well, unfortunately, the Atlanta Falcons. I am in Georgia. I have been forced, subjugated, if you will, to watch the Falcons on Sundays, even though I don't want to. But in my local area, obviously, it plays Falcons games, whether or not I want to watch. And unfortunately, last season, I had to watch a lot of Falcons games. And let me tell you, man, you know, you could, if you wanted to, just throw a lot of the blame onto Desmond Ritter because he sucked. Make no mistake about it. He sucked. The coach sucked. There really weren't a lot of bright spots on the team, but they won 7 games and they were really in it in terms of possibly winning the NFC South until like the very end. But they fell apart, fired the coach, got rid of Desmond Ritter's bum ass. And, you know, their whole offseason really comes down. The reason they're in this video in the first place really comes down to getting Kirk Cousins. That one move in terms of one upgrade, one player for any team in the league, resulting in the most increase in wins. I think it's Kirk Cousins. Like, just because of that one acquisition, their draft was in, the rest of their free agency was in. But just because they got Kirk Cousins, I think the Falcons go from a 7-10 bad team to a literal Super Bowl contender. Like, that's how much value I'm placing on the Kirk Cousins acquisition. And let's get into the guys they brought in besides Kirk. Obviously, taking a look at Kirk first, he suffered his massive, what was it, an Achilles injury last season. He was having an amazing year. Statistically, Kirk was having the best year of any quarterback in the NFL. I mean, look at that. He's on pace for damn near 5,000 yards and 40 something touchdowns. I mean, I'm not going to say he would have won MVP, but he would have had the best statistical season in football had he not got hurt. That's the guy the Falcons are bringing in. And when I make my rankings, like my updated rankings for like top quarterbacks and all that, and I really break it down, I might have Kirk in my top five, to be honest, because all these other guys we consider to be like top high end quarterbacks, it's one year they're great, next year they're hurt, one year they're great, next year they're bad. It's like Kirk has been consistently good in Minnesota for years at this point, and he really is undeniably like a top five, six, seven quarterback in the league. And you compare that to what the fuck the Falcons had last year. Desmond Ritter was a bum. All due respect, rest in peace, the man. He's the backup for the Cardinals now, but he was awful. He could not win games. He turned the football over more than anybody else in the league, even though he missed several games. The man was awful. Kirk Cousins, the biggest upgrade at quarterback possibly in football. It's just going to make a world of difference for the Falcons, and it's going to open up so much what they do. Desmond Ritter couldn't throw the fucking football at times. Can make any throw. He's going to be able to sit in the pocket and finally utilize the weapons that the Falcons have. The new offensive coordinator, he comes in from the Rams, actually. So you saw how the Rams offense functioned last season. They used their two-star receivers. Expect Kyle Pitts and Drake London to get a lot of those looks next season. And I'm happy. I'm excited for it. Here's a couple other guys they brought in. They improved the receiving core, which they did need to do. Darnell Mooney, they took a flyer on him. He used to be a really up and coming, valuable young weapon in Chicago. Then I don't know what happened. He kind of just fell off the face of the earth. Did not do much last season whatsoever. The Falcons are hoping that with a change in pace, a massive upgrade in talent around him, he can come in and be their wide receiver too. And what are we expecting from Darnell Mooney? I'm not sure, but I don't think it's unrealistic at all to expect him to double his numbers from a year before, which sounds kind of crazy, but when you look at the circumstances, Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver two on the Falcons with Kirk Cousins throwing to him and that line and that play calling, I expect Darnell Mooney to have a real jump up from last season to next. Rondell Moore, also young guy for the Cardinals, didn't produce much, but similar situation. You go from Colt McCoy to Kirk Cousins with a much better offense around you. Could Rondell Moore? I expect one of these guys to really solidify themselves as a valuable weapon next year. I'm not sure who it is. I'm leaning towards Darnell Mooney, but Rondell Moore also could be a very valuable gadget guy for the Falcons next season. And then defensively, the draft, they didn't really make too many impact picks in the draft, to be honest. Notably, Michael Penix, doesn't really help the team next season. But they did acquire a couple guys who I expect to make a difference in that front seven. Rukaroro in the interior of the defensive line and Braylon Trice on the outside. I expect both these guys to play situationally. Neither of them, rookie of the year candidates or anything like that. But I do expect these guys to make plays. And as the season goes on, I expect both these guys to make more and more of an impact. So looking at what they were last season statistically, it's kind of shocking. They were still 11th. Is that what? Yeah, 11th in total yards per game. Obviously, they had two great running backs. We know they should have run the ball well. Not able to throw the ball that effectively. Did not even break 20 points per game in terms of scoring. Offensive line, though, not too bad with Desmond, no brains Ritter back there, tied for 12th and fewest sacks allowed, but the turnovers, obviously. They turned it over way too much. Unacceptable. It's tough to win games like that, especially when your defense is not taking the ball away. So they had negative 12 turnover differential, one of the worst in the league. Um, Defensively, they weren't good in too many areas. I guess, top 10 and fewest passing yards. They weren't horrible. I mean, they were middle of the pack, really, across the board, but they didn't get takeaways. And I mean, they got set up in some pretty bad spots by their offense as well. I'll give you that. But, a lackluster defense and a bad offense. It's kind of impressive that they won 7 games, to be honest. That's how bad the rest of the NFC South was. But obviously, not very impressive last season. Here's the new look roster, though. Really, this offense has no excuses with the new quarterback, the new offensive coordinator. This has no excuse to not be a top 10 offense. And I understand the depth at wide receiver isn't really proven. Rondell Moore, Darnell Mooney, we need one of those guys to really step up. But just between these guys, Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, just between those four, it should be enough, honestly. The rest of the guys, it doesn't even matter. Add on to that Tyler Algier. Add on, Tyler Algier, one of, if not the best backup running backs in football. That's whether Bijan gets hurt. That's whether Bijan isn't playing great. Throw Tyler in there for an entire series if you want. One of the best backups in football. You have the assurance of if Kirk Cousins goes down, you can just plug in Michael Penix, who I think is ready to play day one. So you have the injury assurance there for Kirk Cousins. This is a complete offense. I like the offensive line a lot. I mean, no excuse. No excuse for the Falcons not to be a top 10 offense next season. And then defensively, honestly, that difference right there to go from the 20th something offense, the top 10 offense, that should equate the 3 wins I'm talking about here. I think they're going to win at least 10 games. I think 11 is possible, but I think 10 is more realistic. The offensive line, I like it a lot. You have young guys developing like Matthew Bergeron. We already have established vets like Jake Matthews, Caleb McGarry, Chris Lindstrom. We already know who those guys are. Chris Lindstrom is a star offensive guard. So offense is full. It's complete. It's well rounded. I have no issues with that. Defensively, I still don't love the front seven. They got a couple young guys, right? You got Troy Anderson, Arnold Ebiketie, Zach Harrison, 2 guys that you drafted, J.D. Bertrand. You got a lot of young guys, but in terms of established good veterans on the defensive line, it's really just Grady Jarrett. He does not have a lot of help. So we need a breakout season really from somebody like maybe Arnold Ebiketie. I think I might go through and make a breakout video, like 2 for every team, 1 on offense, 1 on defense. Arnold Ebiketie might be that guy for the Falcons because we've seen the growth year 1 to year 2. I think this is year 3 for him. I think this could be the year where he really takes that next step. But the back end, I like Jesse Bates a lot. I like AJ Terrell a lot. I wish they wouldn't have let Jeff Okuda walk for no money, but you got Clark Phillips, who you expect him to take a step forward after a pretty solid rookie season. It's not a great defense. Listen, nobody is predicting the Falcons to be top 10, top 12 defensively, but they were middle of the pack last season. If you expect with a defensive head coach now, by the way, keep in mind, Rams DC Raheem Morris, he's the new head coach here. So do you expect them to be better defensively? I think they should be slightly better. So if we're talking about a top 10 offense, let's say the 8th best offense and the 15th best defense, that's a pretty good team. That's a 10-win team, in my opinion, especially in a weak division, we could be talking about an 11-win team and how good you are situationally. I mean, they could get I mean, 12 wins is not unrealistic at all for the Falcons, in my opinion. So let's summarize here with a couple of their biggest strengths. Already mentioned just how good Kirk can be. I mean, listen, MVP Kirk Cousins, it may sound wild, but last season, man, if last season is any indicator, if that's the standard that needs to be reached for MVP now, I think Kirk can do that and then some. But I do expect a lot of competition next year for MVP compared to last year. Obviously the run game, a new offensive coordinator. I just think the Falcons are gonna look so different offensively next year. It's not even funny. I already mentioned I love the offensive line. I like their weapons. The defensive front seven, it's not good enough yet. They got a lot of young players. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, is that guy that could take the next step in the front seven, but it's still weak in terms of depth. And the secondary, AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, no doubt about those guys. It's a good team, and I expect a big jump, notably because of Kirk Cousins. Next up, we got the Jets. Listen, man, the Jets this is another one. I don't know how they won 7 games. They had one of, if not the worst offenses in football. They gave Zach Wilson another chance, and man, that shit. It was so hard to watch the Jets, man, because it's like the frame was there, the foundation was there. They had the top 5 defense. They had Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall. The offensive line was still not good enough. That's what we came to realize. Aaron Rodgers probably would have got beat up and killed if he did stay healthy. But man, the frame was there. Aaron Rodgers probably gets that team to like 11, 12 wins, to be honest with you. But didn't happen, got hurt on their first series, and they were doomed from there. But Aaron Rodgers returns, and they made a lot. Listen, the Jets have gone on all in. Okay. And I respect that. They know that this is probably Aaron's last year, even if it's not his technically last year. This is the last year that I actually expect anything from Aaron Rodgers. So they know that this is it. This is their 1 year window, and they have acted accordingly. Let's take a look at what they've done here. Notably, they improved the receiving core, which they had to do. Alan Lazard as your wide receiver 2 was not cutting it. Garrett Wilson needed some help, and they went and got it. Mike Williams from the Chargers. The only concerns with Mike Williams really has been the injury history. Um, Wait, was this even last year? Was this 2 years ago? The stats for Mike Will. I don't feel like he did this last. One second, I got it. I gotta check real quick. This is kind of. I gotta make sure Mike Williams these stats are from last year or not. One sec. I think these are actually from 2022. Let me make sure. Because listen, Mike Williams and the injury concerns, it's been a thing his entire career. The talent is there, the size is there, the deep ball ability is there. Yeah, this is from 2022. He only played 3 games last season. Okay, so these are his 2022 stats. So he's a really good player. He's only broke 1,000 yards in his career twice, and that's because he misses so much time. But listen, man, obviously the biggest thing with Mike Williams is if he can stay healthy, if he gets to play with Aaron Rodgers, I have no doubt in my mind the guy's going to be a valuable weapon. Malachi Corley comes in from Western Kentucky. He's more of a Debo Samuel. He can kind of break you down in multiple ways. The Yak King, I think, as he calls himself, and get the ball in his hands. He makes magic happen. I'm excited to see whether or not Mike Williams is healthy. That'll really depend on how many touches Malachi Corley gets, or that'll affect how many touches he gets. I'm excited to see how he looks with Aaron Rodgers. I think he could be a favorite for him and dump off passes and taking these shorter passes and turning them into explosive plays. Braylon Allen, they drafted him. I thought that was a steal of a pick. He was a dominant player at Wisconsin, had at least 1,100 total yards and 10 touchdowns every year he was there. Um, Yards per carry was through the roof as well. He was a great player in college. He comes in now with not a lot of wear and tear on him into the NFL. And whether he's running back 2 or 3, I think he's going to be a valuable weapon. Brees Hall, the injury history, it's unfortunately a thing with him. So Braylon Allen, if he needs to step up, I'm pretty confident that he could give the Jets some good carries. Morgan Moses, they bring him in from Baltimore. And you look at what he did last season, the PFF grades, they're pretty good, honestly. For a right tackle, which I think he's going to continue to play in New York, those are really good PFF grades. That's the only thing I really use to judge offensive linemen. So it's a massive upgrade over what they had last season. Like, listen, the offensive line, they needed to really upgrade the offensive line and the receiver core, and they did both of that this offseason. And then Aaron Rodgers, these are his 2022. Obviously, didn't play last season. 2022. Keep in mind, guys, we're talking about what is it, 3 years removed now from the Aaron Rodgers MVP season. Like it's just not the same guy. It's 3 years removed from when he was at the top of the league. This is his last year in Green Bay. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong, it's not horrible, but it's definitely not MVP level. But this is the thing though, it's the Jets. Even if he does this, if he does this next season, they're an 11-12 win team, no doubt about it. So they don't need MVP Aaron Rodgers. They just need him to protect the football as he usually does. Didn't do in 2022 that well, but protect the ball as he usually does, make the right play, push the ball down the field, and they should easily be miles better than what they were last season. And they're not done. They continue to make move after move. Tyron Smith they brought in from Dallas, Hall of Famer. I mean, I think Tyron Smith, one of the better tackles I've ever seen play. Obviously, similar to Mike Williams, the injury history is the only thing that's held him back lately. But look at the PFF pass rate. I mean, he's one of the best left tackles in football. If he can stay healthy, then he's at David Bakhtiari levels, is what Aaron Rodgers is used to on that left side. John Simpson also bring in him in from Baltimore, played next to Morgan Moses. They're going to keep that up. The PFF grades aren't so high, but I mean, it's very tough, honestly, for offensive guards to get high PFF grades. So that's kind of, I mean, that's pretty average. But again, it's the Jets' offensive line. You'll take average if you know what I mean. Javon Kinlaw comes in from the Niners. They lost, I think it was Quentin Jefferson. They lost him, so Javon Kinlaw comes in to replace him. Keep in mind, history there with Robert Saleh, the head coach from San Francisco. I expect him to have a pretty good season. Kind of a draft bust, to be honest. He was picked in the first round, I believe. Didn't do much with the 49ers, but this was in a very small sample size as a really a rotational defensive tackle. He had 3.5 sacks. I think that's pretty impressive, to be honest. So if he could take a little step forward, also, I think he reunites with Solomon Thomas. Just two busts from San Francisco playing with Robert Saleh now. But I think, Solomon Thomas had a good year last season. I think Javon Kinlaw, we could see some of that same stuff. And then they bring in Chuck Clark again from Baltimore, the, New York Ravens, but he comes in to replace Jordan Whitehead. Pretty solid. Nothing too great to speak of, but the Jets safety duo isn't that all that great. But Chuck Clark, solid safety. And then Hassan Reddick, their big move. Gave up a second round pick to get Hassan Reddick. And that's a massive acquisition, man. He is their premier edge rusher now, the veteran guy. Been amazing, really, for a stretch of years. I mean, how many 10-sack seasons does Hassan Reddick have? Is like 4 or 5. He's a monster, established. Everybody knows how good he is, and it's a massive. That was the move, really. The Hassan Reddick trade really proved to me that the Jets are going all in because they didn't need to get Hassan Reddick, but getting him, it takes that defense to even another level that I didn't know was possible. So let's take a look at the statistics here. I'm gonna start with the defense because it was a top 5 defense in the league, and that's with having a horrible. The argument really is, was this a top 3 defense in the league? Because look at how fucking terrible their offense was, 30th in turnovers. I mean, the Jets were still top 10 in 4 categories defensively. Imagine if they had an average offense that wasn't setting them up in bad positions over and over and over. They were still second in passing yards allowed, got a bunch of takeaways. They were already, this is the thing, 48 team sacks without Hassan Reddick. Add him in, you get the development of guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. This defense is going to be absolutely ridiculous next season. I expect this to be a top 3 defense next season because it's just that good. Robert Saleh, if nothing else, he's proven that he can coach an amazing defense. So that's what I expect from the Jets. And then what do I even say about the offense? I mean, they were what's that? They were bottom 5 in 5 out of these 6 categories. Come on. Their best category here was not even breaking 100 rushing yards a game. The Jets offense was arguably the worst in the league last season, maybe with like the Panthers or something. It was completely terrible, but that's the point, right? That's why they're on the most improved list, because man, they're going to get better at they're going to get better at everything, and by a large leaps and bounds too. Here's the roster. Take a look at the offense. We already know how good Breece Hall is. We know how good Garrett Wilson is. Elijah Vera Tucker is like the only offensive lineman that returns, I think, him and Joe Tippmann. But man, it's such a better offensive line. The offense, it's good. It's really fucking good. Even Tyrod Taylor as a backup, I think, is better than what they had last season, man. But yeah, the whole offense is better. The offensive line, massive step in the right direction, man. And then Olufashano, I forgot they got Olufashano. I didn't even realize that until right now. So if Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses goes down, fuck it, you got like a top 10 pick right there. Man, I forgot about that. Damn. Yeah, the offense is set, man. Offense is fucking set. And then defense, it's a top three defense. Jermaine Johnson, Hassan Reddick off the edge, Quinnen Williams, Javon Kinlaw up the middle, Solomon Thomas, Will McDonald, and it's an amazing defensive line. The linebacking core, Quincy Williams had a breakout season last year, probably should have been all pro. I don't know if he was or not. And then CJ Mosley, man, what a tandem of linebackers. And then we already know Sauce is as good as he is. DJ Reed, Michael Carter, man, it's an amazing defense. It's a great offense. Anything less than 11 wins in a playoff berth is a disappointment. They are probably they are the favorites, I think, to win the AFC East. This is it, man. This is their year. They went all in, and all we gotta do now is see the results. Here's the final thing here. How good is Aaron Rodgers right now? Can he return to his 2022 form? Is that even possible? Is it going to be the worst version of Aaron Rodgers we've seen yet? Nathaniel Hackett. Oh, I haven't even mentioned they still got Nathaniel Hackett. How on earth this man has put together the last 2 years of this man's career, and he's still in the NFL at all is embarrassing, really. Brees Hall, we already know, potential superstar. The wide receiver core is so good. Even just Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson, that duo by itself is amazing. Malachi Corley as well. The most improved offensive line. I don't doubt that at all. They went at 64 sacks last season. We'll see how low that number is the following year. And then the defense, I mean, top five, top three, really. Stars on every level. Hassan Reddick, Quinnen Williams, Quincy Williams, CJ Mosley, Sauce Gardner. I mean, Pro Bowlers all over the place. So listen, man, we know how good the Jets are. Can they put it together? Because at the end of the day, it is still the Jets. Finally, for this video, I got the Texans. Now, the Texans, they kind of break the format for this type of video because they were already good last season, you know. But this is the thing. That was think about this, right? Think about how we think about the Texans right now compared to a year ago. Like a year ago, people were talking like, "Oh, this is probably a 4 or 5 win team, but if they could win 7 or 8 games, that would be really impressive." No, they won 10 games, made the playoffs. CJ Stroud was an MVP candidate. I mean, they surpassed any and all expectations. Didn't they win a playoff game? Yeah, they beat the Browns and they won a playoff game. That shit was ridiculous. So, man, they surpassed any and all expectations last season, and the sky is the limit now. But this is the thing: the Texans, they realized how many young guys they have on rookie contracts. They realized that they weren't really paying anybody big money besides Laramie Tunsil. So guess what they did? They went all out this offseason. And they basically said, we got a rookie or a quarterback making rookie money, a bunch of other guys on rookie contracts. We can splurge and load this roster with talent. And that's what they did. So because of that, I think the Texans could I actually think the Texans probably should win the most regular season games. I got them at 14-3, probably the best record in the league next season. So I still think the Texans qualify for this video because I think they're going to win at least 3 more games than they did the year before. Here's just some of the guys that, I mean, look at this list, man. Every guy on this list was a Pro Bowl caliber player last year. Stephon Diggs, obviously. The situation with him in Buffalo is just ridiculous. The Bills willingly gave away their best weapon on their entire offense to the Texans for next to nothing, by the way. Next to nothing. So the Texans bring in Stephon Diggs. Is he the wide receiver one? Is it Nico Collins? Who cares? Obviously, Nico's a better deep threat. They're going to use Stephon Diggs in the short and intermediate routes. It's going to work perfectly. I don't care who the wide receiver one is. They're both great players. Danico Autry comes in from a division. So not only are you adding Danico Autry and Aziz Al-Shaair, you're also greatly weakening a division rival in the process. I love both of those moves. Autry, by the way, 11 and a half sacks. I think 11 and a half sacks. There were Pro Bowl edge rushers that have not had 11 and a half sack seasons. So he comes in, amazing year last year. He's a great player off the edge. Aziz Al-Shaair, 163 tackles, 9 TFLs. And keep in mind, the Texans needed a veteran presence at linebacker. They're so young at that position. Aziz Al-Shaair fills that role beautifully. And Danielle Hunter, here's the thing about Danielle Hunter. Nobody mentions him in the TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett tier. But look at the numbers. The last 2 years, by the way, the man hasn't missed a game. We got Mr. Iron Man over here, 148 tackles as an edge rusher, as an outside linebacker, 75 tackles a year, 27 sacks over the last 2 years, 35 tackles for loss, 44 QB hits. Statistically, the man is one of the best defensive players in football. The Texans got him. And I understand they lost Jonathan Grenard in the process. It was basically a trade. Jonathan Grenard for Daniil Hunter. But the Texans won that trade, man. Grenard's a good player, but he's no Daniil Hunter. Daniil Hunter is that guy. He's already established. He is the pinnacle of what you're hoping every young edge rusher in the NFL can become one day. Moving on to the second part of this, Joe Mixon. Do you guys still remember that they got Joe Mixon? It was a very slept on move. Nobody was really paying much attention to it. Look, Devin Singletary, again, similar to Jonathan Grenard, he was a good player. He was a good player for the Texans last season. He's not fucking Joe Mixon. He is just not Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon really revived his career these last couple years. No fumbles, no fumbles the last 2 years. Last season was really kind of a resurge, a rebirth for Joe Mixon, over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns. And remember, the Bengals quarterback situation. Joe Burrow was hurt for a large stretch of last season, so Joe Mixon had to shoulder the load, and he did it beautifully. Over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was like a top 5, 6 running back in the league last year. So the Texans bring him in. Remember, they didn't have a top end guy. They had Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce. They finally have a great running back. Man, and then the cornerbacks, Jeff Okudah is not a running back, contrary to popular belief. The cornerbacks, that cornerback room was not good. The secondary was not good enough. So they went out and improved it this offseason. Jeff Okudah comes in from Atlanta. I really like Jeff Okudah. I understand he was the highest drafted cornerback in NFL history. Did not work out with Detroit. Did not work. But this is the thing. Just because he didn't turn into a superstar Pro Bowler, the last 2 years of Jeff Okudah's career that he's been healthy, he's been solid. He is a good cornerback. Just because he's not an Pro Bowler doesn't mean he's bad at all. He's a good cornerback statistically. No touchdowns allowed, a fine quarterback rating allowed when he's thrown three PBUs. He is the Texans' second best cornerback right now on paper. And then you draft Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. He comes in. Obviously, he was a stud for Georgia the last couple of years, 2-time national champion, a good play, like second round pick, probably the best cornerback on the board, right? So I love that pick. I like the Jeff Okudah pickup. The cornerback room just took a massive step in the right direction. Two young players, too. Both these guys could be here for a long, long time. Statistically, here's what the Texans were great at last season. Did not turn the ball over. For a rookie quarterback, by the way, the fewest turnovers in the league. That is an amazing number. And on top of that, keep in mind, you bring in Joe Mixon, no fumbles the last 2 years. The Texans are putting together a formula here to just not turn the football over, which is it's a great formula. No mathematician here, but that's a winning formula right there. Top 10 in passing yards, obviously, CJ Stroud. They weren't, though, a dominant offense or anything like that. They were 13th in points per game, 22nd in rushing yards and sacks allowed, but they didn't turn it over. They played great in key moments, and they won 10 games. And then defensively, this is the thing, too. They were above average defensively. D'Amico Ryans, he got the very best out of his guys defensively. Top 11 in points per game, sixth in rushing yards allowed. That's a good number. Um, but still middle of the pack in a lot of categories, but they still won 10 games because they didn't turn it over. They got a solid amount of takeaways defensively, and they played good in crucial moments. That's how you got to win games nowadays. Here's the roster. It's a great roster. The wide receiver core, including the tight. Here's the thing about the wide receiver core. Look at your wide receiver 4, Noah Brown. Look at your wide receiver 5, John Mechie. Look at your tight ends. This doesn't even include Cade Stover, who comes in from the draft. Already has that connection with CJ Stroud. They got 3 tight ends. I mean, multiple running backs. The offense is fucking stacked. And the offensive line, which I guess most people would point to as an issue, Titus Howard, established veteran, good player. Shaq Mason, established veteran, good player. Laramie Tunsil, one of the best in the league. The left guard, Kenyon Green, first round pick 2 years ago. Not as good as you would hope, but you would hope with all this talent around him, he takes a step in the right direction. Juice Scruggs, rookie last season. Again, you would hope, the improvement, he steps in the right direction next season. But that's the only thing, is having a young interior of your offensive line. Besides that, they're fucking solid. They're foolproof. And then defensively, man, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry. Did those guys? What are those? Did they combine for 30 sacks last year at least? Probably. You got Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o at linebacker, led by Azeez Al-Shaair. The secondary, Jalen Petre, Derek Stingley, already established guys. And then you bring in Kamari Laster, Jeff Okuda, Desmond King still there, Jimmy Ward still there. I like the defense. A lot of young guys, but you got the mix. You got the veterans, the established guys in there too. I love this team, man. One of my favorite, or one of the favorites, I should say, in the entire NFL to go all the way, really. And here's what we're looking
at a sophomore jump or slump from CJ Stroud. That's the question mark. From a rookie to a second season, we don't really know how those guys, sometimes it's a guy just he reaches that next level, he uses the experience he builds on his rookie season, or he finds it more difficult in year two than year one. It happens sometimes. But again, the offense deep at every position. I have no concerns about this offense whatsoever. Defensively, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, the best pass rush trio in the NFL. These guys are all established monsters. The linebackers, I love the linebackers. Fly all over the field. The secondary, 4 good cornerbacks on this secondary. Most teams don't have 2 that you can name. Texans have 4. So honestly, man, no complaints. It's a great team that should, at bare minimum, I think, make the AFC Championship game. It could possibly go all the way. I'm excited. I might make a whole video like talking about the Texans, but they make this list, man. Amazing team. That's gonna be it though. That is gonna be it for this video. I think the next video I'm gonna do is the most like discipline, like the teams that are gonna take the biggest step back because these are most improved. So I'm gonna do the opposite of that the next video. But look, man, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're new, like if you enjoyed, and I will see you shortly on the next one. Peace.